got to do some more legal stuff here. So if you look, I think it's the back of the second page of your packet. There is proposed changes to the Constitution of Sioux Falls Christian Schools Association. So just to frame this a little bit, the Constitution is really the fundamental legal document that kind of drives what this association is. Who the members are, how decisions are made, how the board's elected, and things like that. So it's so fundamental that the association has to approve any proposed changes to the Constitution. So you don't have the full Constitution in front of you there. You've just got Article 5, because that's the only one that has any change associated with it. So what we've got in Article 5, that deals with who's a member of the association. So Section 1 of Article 5 deals with becoming a member. Section 5 deals with when you're no longer a member. So what those collectively currently provide is that you become a member as soon as you enroll. Two ways to become a member. You enroll a child at Sioux Falls Christian and you automatically become a member that way. You can also become a member if you don't have a child here by application, and that application gets approved by the board. But what the Constitution currently provides is once you become a member, you stay a member forever unless the board terminates your membership. So as we looked at this as a board, the effect of that was if, for example, somebody had a child at Sioux Falls Christian in 2003 in first grade, was here for a semester, then was pulled out, that person would still be a member of the Sioux Falls Christian Schools Association, could come to this meeting tonight, could vote on the budget, could vote on board members and whatever else comes about. As we talked about that, we thought that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. We should probably have the membership be more aligned with those people that really do have an interest in Sioux Falls Christian currently. So what we've changed is Section 5. So the way you become a member of Sioux Falls Christian in Section 1 remains the same. You enroll a child at Sioux Falls Christian, you become a member, or you can become a member by application. For example, if you're a teacher here, you fill out the application, you affirm your agreement with the faith statements, and you can become a member upon board approval. What we change is how your membership terminates. So now in Article 5 it provides that your membership can terminate in two ways. One, if the board determines that we're going to kick you out, which I don't think has happened too often. And the other way now is if you no longer have a child that is enrolled at Sioux Falls Christian, you will automatically no longer be a member of the association. We thought that was a good way to deal with a situation where we've got hundreds of members out there who are technically members but have no interest in Sioux Falls Christian anymore. But at the same time, we felt comfortable in doing that because we still have the application process. So for example, if you have a senior this year, your last child at Sioux Falls Christian, they're graduating, so you would no longer be a member of the association. You'd have the opportunity to apply for membership and maintain that affiliation with Sioux Falls Christian as a member. So that's what's being proposed in the change to Article 5 there to the Constitution. Like I said, that requires a member vote. The board approved it and is recommending it to this group for your approval. Any questions on any of that? Yes?
Would the application have to be filled out manually, or?
No, good question. Once you've been approved via application, that would your membership would continue until you were terminated by the board, or you withdrew. You provided notice that you no longer wanted to be a member. Good question. Any other questions on the Constitution change? If not, I would take a motion recommending that approval. Jeremy moves. Do we have a second? John Gadberry seconds. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Okay, at this time I am going to take a quick moment to recognize the school board members. I don't think a lot of you may know who is all on the school board, so I usually try to use this opportunity when we have a little bit of a public forum to have everybody just be recognized real quick. When I call your name, just quick stand up, turn around, say hi to everybody so that way people kind of know who is on the board. The first one, you don't have to stand because he was just up here, is Dan Harmelink, Jennifer Chris Griebel, John Sharda, where's John at? John's back there. John Gadberry, Julie McDonald, you can stay because you already read the minutes so you know who Julie is. Chris Haugen, myself, and Jason Pruce. And then last year, the four newly appointed board members is Nate Ingber's here. There he is. Ryan Nelson, Sandy Dielman, and Bruce Watley. Far corner. All right, thanks guys. That gives you a little idea who the board is. But this year, we have really no board members leaving. If you remember a few years back at the association meeting, we shrunk the board from 16 down to 12. And so this year, we have two board members whose terms are up, and that is John Sharda and John Gadberry. They have both asked to be re-elected and re-up for an additional 4-year term. So at this time, if you will take your ballots, and you'll have an opportunity to vote yes or no for either one of the Johns. And then a couple of the board members will be picking those up at the aisles and collecting those, and then we'll announce in a second. All right, we get to move on to the fun part now, the budget. So we have been working diligently here over the last few months to put together the 18-19 budget. I've been on the finance team now for 7 years, and I will say that the budget's getting a little more challenging every single year for a couple different reasons. But we'll start off just kind of going through a few budget assumptions. The enrollment numbers are a moving target, but as we put together all the students we have here now, we roll them forward into the new classes. We estimate kind of what kindergarten's going to be, and then we've usually every year taken in a few extra students in high school and middle school. But our budget includes 6 additional students, even though we know that can certainly change. We just kind of went back on some averages, and 6 additional students is what we included in there. We did vote to approve a tuition increase of about 3% to tuition, which comes out to an average increase per student of $280. And we did roll the technology fee into our tuition numbers now. Rather than paying that as a separate line item, we rolled that into tuition. Our net tuition number is $7,648,980. That is net of the $923,000 that we give for multi-student discounts, payment discounts, and tuition assistance. So it's a big number that we give out in aid and discounts. The other income, in order to balance the budget, this is a number that kind of keeps increasing on us here, and it's $838,270. I'll break that down on the next slide a little bit more what that entails, but I think it's important to know that right now we have a need of $329,970 that has to be raised from a development standpoint. And so rather than increasing tuition too much and passing on that extra need in a tuition basis, we have put that as a line item in our budget for our development team to raise. So when you break down the actual numbers of our budget and what is needed to actually balance it, we are short approximately $640 per student. I think that's an interesting number because the board and the finance team does take that seriously. We know that sometimes there's a tipping point to tuition, and we want to make sure we stay as competitive and as low as possible. So that's why many hands make light work on fundraisers and a lot of the development need too that's out there. So that's an interesting stat. Last year that number was just a little over 500, and as we've taken on some extra expenses that I'll explain in here in a bit, that's about $640 now per student. Payroll and benefits are going to be roughly $7,038,000. That includes 2.6 FTEs or 6 part-time positions. We increased our teacher base pay up to $35,000. One of the things I'll talk about a little bit later too is we just reviewed and revamped our teacher pay. I'll talk about that a little bit more detail later, but in order to be competitive with the state of South Dakota, we raised our part-time pay, or our teacher base pay up to $35,000. And then the big line item is a pension plan expense. And I'll spend just a quick moment talking about that. We were notified as a board about 1.5 to 2 years ago that the Christian School International, the CSI pension plan, has gone into an underfunded status. And if you read the news a lot and watch a lot of TV, you'll hear that there's many, many pension plans that have closed down and shut down, and major corporations are seeing the pinch that a defined benefit plan has, and that's why most corporations today have moved to a 401k, a 403b, or a 457 plan. And so the CSI pension is running into the same difficulties. So they did a study. They put out some numbers based on the number of teachers we have and the size of our current pension plan, and came up with a number for a few years that each school will need to participate and put into the pension plan just to kind of keep it afloat for a while. And the Sioux Falls Christian number ended up coming in at $280,500. So that's a budget line item that just got hit just to keep that pension plan going for a little while. Now we're very lucky and fortunate to have Jay Woudstra and Jeremy Van Nieuwenhuizen, who have volunteered their time to both be on separate committees relating to CSI. So we feel like we are keeping in the loop pretty good, but it is a problem, and we do care about our teachers and our past teachers and new ones that will be coming. We want to make sure that they work hard on a day-to-day basis, and yet they have the pension benefits there for them. So that'll be something that we'll continue to discuss as time goes on. All right, so this is just the income side of the budget. You can see we've got tuition. There's that $7,648,980 line. Registration fees make up of about $86,000 of the income. We take in roughly $19,000 in rental income here. We get about $120,000 in district funds and grants. We also have new to you church offerings that are bringing in $85,900. A bright spot in that line item is new to you. If you haven't been there for a while, we have a manager there now. Her name is Jill Tenhaken, who has been running new to you. And in just a short period of time, we have already exceeded our revenue in that we've been bringing in for new to you. So if you haven't dropped stuff off there for a while or gone into shop, it's a good opportunity to take a look at that. Annual fundraisers, $197,400. That is your golf tournament, your cookie fair, and the auction that we do in November. And then there's that development fundraising line of $329,970 for a total revenue line of $8,487,000. When it comes to expenses, you can see there the payroll here is $5,039,000. Payroll taxes at $354,000, and then the employee benefits at $1.6 million. 83% of our budget goes to teacher pay and benefits. Books and supplies at about $325,000. We have some special activities special activities, a variety of different things that we do here, from teacher in service and some of those things, field trips. Technology is a bigger line item right now. It's $190,000. That's a little larger than it's been in the past, and here's why. In the past, technology has been growing very fast here, as you all know. We've introduced Chromebooks, we have iPads, and in the past we've been able to dip into some reserves. Well, those reserves now are starting to get low, and so we can't tap into the reserve bucket that we used to have. And so that line item always used to be about that costly, but it never showed up in the budget as that much because we could use reserves. So we asked our technology team a while back to put together kind of a 5-year plan on improving the technology infrastructure, from networks to switches to new Chromebooks, all of that, and that's where the $190,000 line item comes. I'll just skip down. Some of those are pretty boring and basic, like utilities and phone, vehicle and travel expense at 31, yard and snow removal at 181. Snow is obviously a moving target too. You never know when the Lord's gonna make a shovel. Property and liability insurance at 70, and then I'll skip down to other professional fees, contingencies, things like that. So we have in that line item legal expenses, our audit that we take every year, tax return expenses. We also have staff appreciation expenses in there, nursing supplies, and a little bit of some bank charges inside of those professional and contingency fees. And then the capital expenditure and building additions is $100,000. We've also struggled with this number a little bit. We've kept it low. But as Jake said, we've been in this building for a while now. If you have a water heater that goes out, it can be $25,000 to $30,000 for a new water heater because of the size of the one that's needed. If we were to ever have a rooftop air conditioning heating unit go out, that's extremely expensive. So the building of this age really should have a capital expenditure that's much bigger than $100,000, but we wanted to keep it somewhat low in order to keep tuition competitive. There's going to be your new tuition rates. That is in your packet, so I won't dwell on those a whole lot. But you can look at those. Those are going to be your preschool rates on the top half, and then the bottom half will be your K through your 12. Again, just a notation in that middle school and high school line item, that does now include the tech fee. We're going to continue with multifamily discounts, and so if you have multiple students here, you will continue to get a discount. And then what we rolled out last year was if you pay in full at registration, you'll get a $100 per student discount, and if you sign up for monthly automatic payment, you'll also get a $100,000. It'd be nice if it was $100 discount with a maximum of $400 per student. All right, so that kind of gives you a brief rundown on the overall budget. Okay, with that, we need a motion to approve the budget for the 18-19 school year. Got a motion, can I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, budget will carry.
All those things. The next piece of this, I've got 5 people that are going to come up, and they told me they would stay under 5 minutes to do this. We have been working at strategic planning for the last couple of years, started in 2016, and we are really close, if not there, with the finished product of what a strategic plan will look like for Sioux Falls Christian in the next 5 to 7 years. And what you're also going to see coming out of that is a capital campaign. Some of you probably have participated in a feasibility study that we did back in January. And if you haven't participated in that, you will be contacted sometime in the next 3 to 6 months as to what a campaign is going to look like. But part of that campaign is coming out of the strategic planning that we have done for the last 2 years. And it's been a great process. We formed task force groups for all 5 phases of this strategic plan. So we had teachers, administrators, board members, parents, community group or community members, business leaders, pastors,
that were all part of these task force groups that did the work for the strategic plan. So it wasn't something that was done in-house. It was something that we tried to get, and most of our teams were probably 9 to 13 people that did the work for, the majority of the work for the strategic plan. So I've asked these 5 people to come up and just give you, this is going to be a 30,000 foot view in 5 minutes, or maybe 50,000 foot view in 5 minutes. But it will give you a little bit of a taste on where we're going and the direction we want to go. And at some point, probably when we launch something a little bigger, you're going to see the entire strategic plan in paper form, electronic form. But tonight I just want to give these guys the opportunity to present. And whoever's presenting tonight either chaired one of those task forces or was heavily involved in the work of those task forces. So we're going to start off with Pam Tiefenthaler, and she's our Chief Executive or Education Officer at Sioux Falls Christian, and she led the academic achievement piece.
Okay, like Jay said, I will be talking about academic piece of the strategic plan. And at the time that we put this together, we labeled it academic excellence. And I know excellence can have various connotations, and we all want to be excellent when we go through something and when we're a part of something. But the one thing that I've come more and more to realize is that excellence in giving glory to God and loving God and serving God is really our ultimate goal. If that means sometimes we aren't the absolute top of something, that's okay, as long as we are giving it to God and doing our best with the abilities that God has given us. So when I look at this title now, I kind of cringe because I've just kind of come to that realization that it's not the excellence in that particular activity or in that academic, but it's the excellence that we give to God and the glory that we give to Him. So I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but I just see that and I wonder, do we know what that even means? And hopefully you'll understand that. The process that we went through for this, I'll just give you a little picture. Those are the different files that we went through, and there's one page showing on this screen for each document that we looked at, but each document had many, 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 many pages to it as well. So we sorted through a lot of data, and some of that data included test results, it included parent surveys, it included SWOT analysis, strategic planning template, the daily prayer focus, all kinds of different pieces of information. So it wasn't just our opinions about what we think we need to do. This came from data that we looked at and reviewed about our school. The objectives that we came up with from this data might seem a little obvious, but when I go through them, I'll just let you know that there's more meat to it beyond what these objectives state. So first of all, our objective 1, achieving at high levels based on student ability. And as an education institution, that seems pretty obvious. I mean, of course we want to achieve at high levels, and of course we want that to be based on student ability. But that is a really hard job. We need to constantly be reminding ourselves that that is our academic goal, is to bring all of our students up to the level that they have. So not only do we need to do that, we need to also be thinking about what are the diverse options that we can offer in order to have those students meet those ability levels. And how can we support them in doing that? And then how can we constantly support our teachers in being equipped to do that? So those are our main 4 objectives. And the next part of this is going to show you how we hope to get there through the action steps. So first of all, one of the things that we noted going through the testing data was that writing was was always our lowest score out of all the other scores that were included. We were always above the national average, we were always above the state average, but it was always kind of the lowest number among all the others. So we thought, okay, let's make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in writing. So one piece of that is going to be as an administrative team and with the teachers supporting and being part of that process, we're hoping to develop and implement a cross-curricular plan to improve and enhance everyday student writing K through 12 with specified standards of writing or for writing. So we have a common language all the way through from early childhood to high school. Expand student reading, because we know that the more students read, the better their vocabulary becomes and the better their writing becomes, because they see examples of good writing. And then develop a plan that includes various ways to enhance learning for students who need extra support. So that's part of the making sure we're meeting the needs of all students, making sure that we are constantly reevaluating how we're meeting the needs of students who need a little extra to keep them going. Next on the list is to develop a plan that includes various ways to enhance learning for all elementary, middle school students who might want or need to have some accelerated learning. Maybe they are very strong in a particular subject. How are we meeting that need, and how are we helping them even enhance further the gifts that God has given them? So we want to be looking at that pretty intensely and developing a plan that will help us fully develop students' gifts. The other one is to develop ways to enhance learning for high school students who want to accelerate their learning, and we're looking at possibilities such as maybe a K through 14 environment. So maybe that, yes, they're meeting all their graduation requirements, but they're ready to tackle some college level classes. And we do that already, quite a bit actually, but how can we put that in a systematic approach that helps students be ready for that next level? A couple more here. Research and determine potential equipment for our STEM class. STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math, is something that came up in our surveys at that point. And so we did add a middle school STEM program, and this was a piece of that. It was working with that teacher and with our technology department to make sure that we are continually having the appropriate equipment and materials that are needed for that. And that's going to be an ongoing thing to make sure that we're doing the right things in that class. Those classes. And then develop a plan to support new and veteran teachers with opportunities to strengthen their content knowledge, sharpen their skills, and providing time and opportunities to meet the needs of learners through data conversations and PLCs. So giving the teachers the support that they need to continually develop their craft and develop the things that they need to for the students. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Is the action steps, are they only for middle school or high school?
No.
How are the teachers evaluated then to know that they're,
Right.
to ensure that they're following those action steps?
Our teachers, our administrators, our principals at every level have their own evaluation process, and so I probably would look to them to share more information about that, but they are very intentional about how they do that. There are goals that are put together with the teachers at the beginning of the year, and they move forward in achieving those. They're observed many times throughout the year, and then there is a final evaluation at the end of the school year.
Does it go by though a student by student basis that they're observed on, or is it like as a whole, their whole classroom that they're evaluated on?
Again, I would probably defer those questions to the principals who go through this process, but it's a combination. I mean, you not only want to reach your whole class, you want to reach your individual students' needs. So that is a process that they have developed it very intentionally to help teachers move through that process. Okay, thank you. Jeremy Van Nieuwenhuizen will come next.
I was part of the culture and communications group, and those are two really huge topics. So to throw those together is a little bit of a large task, but some of the things that we came up with as plans, and this is based on surveys of staff, students, and parents as well, for us to be able to decide what we need to do a better job of. And one thing that we've known for years that we need to do a good job of is communicate well with people. What's tricky about that is you can put something out there, but if people don't read it, often we will have people frustrated that we didn't communicate something, and we can point back to, well, it was in the weekly newsletter on September 17 or whatever, but they don't read that. So it's important for us to have communication strategies that people will actually take advantage of. And so we're constantly looking at what does the millennial parent, for example, at lower elementary and early childhood, what's the best way to communicate with them? So things that we took a look at were our newsletter, and those of you who have been here or had students here for a number of years have maybe noticed that the Principally Speaking has become a video from the admins and other videos that get sent out. We're looking at our website to be a better communications tool, and that will be revamped, and you'll see a change in that in the near future. We're also looking at an all-school app, a Sioux Falls Christian app for mobile devices, and that's actually going to be a really helpful tool for existing families. Our website is going to be more geared toward new families that are moving into the area, and you're going to be able to find information much more quickly on our school app that's going to be coming out very soon. As well as you can see our LG3 wall that was built just a couple of weeks ago, and that kind of relates to our second initiative. So the first one was to examine and revamp all school communication tools. The second one was to explore adding a position of storyteller and/or marketing director, and we have moved in that direction. We have a teacher who part of his pay or part of his day is devoted to marketing and storytelling, and Mr. Ivan Voss is telling our story of the association meeting right now. You can see if you if you like our Facebook page, or if you visit our Vimeo site, you'll see videos that kind of tell the story of Sioux Falls Christian, what's happening in the classrooms, and the things that are going on here that align with our mission. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't connected with those or you haven't seen any of those, let us know, because we want to put you in touch with those, because those are really powerful stories of the hard work that teachers are doing and the great things that God is doing through us. We also wanted to increase direct communication from teachers to students and to parents. And so one of the things, or a couple of things that we've been working on with that, are remind texts from teachers to students and to parents. And that is more probably in the middle and high school for students, and really early childhood through 12 for parents, where teachers can send a text each week to say, here's what we've been working on, ask your child about this topic, those kinds of things. As well as we've moved into a Google Classroom environment. We've had Chromebooks for a few years, but now students have one place to go for all of their classroom communications. So all of their classes point back to basically one site where they can see everything there and access all of their work and submit all of their work. So that was to increase direct communication from teachers to students and parents. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that's tricky about this is we try to focus our efforts on the things that are going to be most effective, but we don't always hear back from people as to which tool they use to access information about Sioux Falls Christian, or are they waiting for direct communication, direct emails from the school, and so on. So that's always the trick in this, is to try to communicate in the way that's most effective for the audience that we're trying to reach. So we continue to look at those methods at all times. So that's it for the communication piece. Are there any questions about the initiatives, the objectives for communication? Okay, then for culture, we had a couple of objectives. The first one was to develop student leadership in creating a positive Christ-centered culture. And so we're looking at increasing practical opportunities for middle school and high school students to develop and utilize their leadership skills to benefit their peers. We have such things as Step Up and ambassadors programs, mentor families, and so on, but we want to build on that. So one of the things, of course, these are all in process, and so one of the things that we've been looking at is identifying ways to identify leaders, but also to grow leadership among the students. An example of how you can do that is to pick, let's say, an extracurricular activity like choir. Choir has officers in the choir, such as the president of the choir and the chaplain of the choir. So those two would be considered leaders from within that group that could be developed. Their leadership could be developed. So we would have occasional leadership training events for those kinds of students. Other examples include captains of sports teams, student body government students, as well as our Step Up students. So those are just ways to identify those leaders, and then we want to grow the leadership ability that's within those students. Another way that we seek to do that, we have a new class this year called LEAD, and it's a senior class that it's an abbreviation for Leadership, Evangelism, and Discipleship. And in this type of course, the goal would be to develop leadership skills in our students, set them up with mentors, and to help them become better disciple makers. The other thing that we've begun doing in the middle school is started to explore enrichment clusters. The middle school teachers will identify those as dear time exploratories, where we're exposing students to things beyond just what's offered in the classroom, but things that might be areas of interest that we can explore together, but also grow their leadership skills in those things as well. The second objective is to create and monitor task forces. So this is an offshoot of the board. It's not from board members only, it's community members, parents, and so on, that can examine and address specific culture shaping issues at Sioux Falls Christian. So one of those was we felt the need to have a task force that would look at relevant cultural issues such as LGBTQ issues, as well as transgender issues, cohabitation, and so on. So we actually developed a statement which will be going through the board review process for our manual, a statement on marriage, gender identity, and sexuality. So we're constantly looking at how does Sioux Falls Christian respond to that, because it's important that students hear a united message. So we wanted that to be representative of God's word primarily, but also represented in our policies and procedures as well. And we're also continuing to always look at where God is calling us to be, what He's calling us to be as a school with regard to what kind of student we have in our building, what kinds of families we have here, and we want to be diverse within the body of Christ, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is as diverse as maybe the community outside of the walls. So we just want to continue to look at where God is calling us to be there. And the last thing is to monitor and address specific issues affecting students' social experience. We want to be sure that students are feeling a part of Sioux Falls Christian, that this is their community, that they're feeling loved and supported in the things that they're doing and in the abilities that God has given them. So things that we've done or that we're looking at doing include, we added a Dean of Students role to the middle school and high school. We also are proposing an increase in our counseling department so that we can be proactive about setting up good relationships between students, but also helping students to deal with the inevitable things that come their way as part of their daily life. So are there any questions about the culture piece of our plan? Okay, next we have Matt Covey.
My role was to lead the strategic planning team around future facility needs at Sioux Falls Christian. So when Jay asked me to lead this group, he said, "Matt, I want you to figure out what buildings we need to build for the next 20 years. And I thought, well, how hard can that be? So no, but seriously, we had a really dynamic group. We had several business people from the community who were parents that served in area development. We had a good number of staff, and we also had board members and administrators that served on this task force. And really, it came down to two things. So we were looking at future facility needs. We're looking at short-term needs, things we know we need soon, but also long-term or future possibilities. So as we studied that, we figured out there's some things we know we need right now, things we need very soon. The first one would be room in our high school. As was mentioned already this evening, our high school enrollment's going to go from about 280 to over 350 in a couple years. And we are already maximized our current space, so obviously we're going to need more room. So we're planning to add those high school classrooms. On the elementary end and early childhood end, we're maxed out. We actually have run out of space. Spanish is on a cart. We have offices that are storage rooms that are offices. I think they're going to move me to the roof this summer. We have an office that used to be a janitorial closet. We're just really tight for space. And any additional classrooms, and we're planning for more classrooms, 4 to 6. That's part of the campaign that was touched on tonight a little bit. That'll give us a lot of room to do some things that we want to do, but namely, it gives us more space for kids. We're out of space. Thirdly, I just want to talk about future plans, kind of a comprehensive view. This was a comprehensive study, so we didn't necessarily look at one specific facility need. We tried to think about different possibilities that we might be able to develop on this current property, but also the 20 acres of land that we have to the south of us. And instead of giving you every single facility idea we had, I want to share with you a little bit of how we looked at each facility needs. So you have an idea of how the board is thinking and how we're thinking as a group. The first thing we looked at was, how does the idea align with our mission? Does it fit with who we are as an institution? Does it fit with our mission and our vision? So whatever the idea was, may it be a fine arts facility or performing arts center, how does that align with our mission as a school? And there were many ideas, and fine arts facility is just one of them. The second thing we looked at was, how does this address logistical needs? Obviously, parking's at a premium, and traffic, it's not that good. So what we looked at was, if we add this, does it improve the situation, or does it possibly make it worse? And those are just things you have to think about when you consider adding facilities. The third thing we looked at was capacity to generate revenue. This was mentioned tonight. It's going to be mentioned some more tonight. Is there something we could build that, number one, could serve our school, serve our students and our families, but could it also generate revenue that can be put back into our families and the people here? So we looked at possibilities for that as well. The fourth thing was community need. What does the community of Sioux Falls need? Is there something that we can offer for our families that we could also offer for our community in a way to partner with the community? We also looked at location relative to population growth. So when you think about expanding your early childhood offerings, or the possibility of starting a daycare, things like that, you have to consider, is the land around you going to be developed? And obviously when families determine where they're going to send their child when they're younger, location is king, and that's a big deal. Where is it? How far do they have to drive? We're in a prime spot for that. We talked to the T city planners, the Harrisburg city planners, the Sioux Falls city planners, and the land around us in the next 10 years is going to be developed primarily for single unit homes, for family homes. So you have to think about that also when you add any facility. We also want to, the last thing I'll mention is we want to maximize our current space. So one of the options was, we'll build a new high school. We have 20 acres, let's build a new high school. That was an idea. But you have to ask, how will that maximize our current space? We build a new high school, that'd be great, but we have to understand that leaves a portion of our building that we have currently empty for several years before the middle school would move into that. So it was a comprehensive look regarding facilities. We looked at short-term needs, and we also looked at future possibilities for facilities. Any questions?
What was the thought of having the high school be empty for 7 years? I mean, what do people think about that? Harrisburg, I believe it was Harrisburg High School was empty for, I think, 3 years for parts of their area. I just was curious.
Yeah, so basically, that's a good question. Basically what we did is we studied the different options, and we put them across a matrix regarding pros and cons. So for a high school, one of the things we looked at was, how does it maximize current space? Now, across the matrix, there was a lot of positives about building a high school, but on that particular piece of the matrix, we had to agree that it didn't maximize our space well at this current time. So it was just a big picture view, and we basically took every possibility and just kind of measured it that way based on, pros and cons for each piece. One of the things I didn't mention, I think, was how well, a possibility or a facility addition could increase space, but is it space we need the most? So you looked at different options. There were some things that it met the need, and on some of them, it really didn't meet a need that was urgent.
What are the next steps? Are you going to kind of publish some ideas that are coming out of this? Or?
Yeah, so the capital campaign is going to be a big part of this, and that'll be public here pretty soon. I don't want to say anything that'll get me in trouble in regards to a capital campaign, but we know that classroom space is going to be part of the campaign, and that'll be communicated here in the next few months.
Will this affect tuition at all going on? Next year, 2 years, we add 4 to 6 classrooms, or?
Yeah, well, the question was, will it affect tuition? I can't answer that, Eric. I think it's a fair question. I think the intent of a capital campaign, though, is to raise those capital funds so it doesn't impact tuition. So if the need is $6 million, I think the commitment would be to raise $6 million so that we're not in debt and that particular capital expense doesn't increase tuition.
I had the opportunity to help lead the initiative on discipleship and faith nurturing. And it's an interesting and exciting task force to be on. When you think about what sets us apart from every other school in our conference in our region, it's the fact that we are intentional about the faith nurturing and the discipleship that happens here at school. It's also unique because it's not a matter of raising more money or building more classrooms or purchasing the right curriculum. Just like a farmer recognizes that he can't make a plant grow, we recognize that we can't force a heart commitment. And like Corinthians 3 verse 7 says, neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but it's only God who makes it grow. And we acknowledge that we cannot force this, that we can't guarantee spiritual transformation, but we also know that God always works through his word to bring about regeneration and to bring about sanctification. And so our goal, our initiative, is that we would create or ensure a dynamic discipleship culture that, first of all, educates minds. We recognize that that's our entry point, educating minds with the truth of God's word, nurturing hearts that they would treasure Christ. And as we start with the head and it moves to the heart, the hope is that it would equip our students to live a life that would help bring about the restoration that came from Christ's redemption on the cross. So our objectives, really we had 3 main objectives that we're looking at. Our task force was really fun. We had a bunch of pastors and teachers and parents and even a couple high school students. And our dialogue went all over the place. It's such an exciting initiative to think about. But the 3 objectives that we settled on, first of all, revolved around teaching for transformation. And I think that's a term that's familiar to many of us. Most of us are staff, and we've been trained, and we so appreciate the staff development days that we have to work on teaching for transformation. But really the initiative is to continue the implementation of that. We're kind of going through a transition year. Mr. Ryan Chase had been the head, kind of the spearhead of leading our staff and doing a lot of the training. Since that time, he took a job as a pastor, and so we're in a period of transition with that. And yet I think many of us would say that we see the implementation taking place. I know yesterday my daughter wanted to go out and play in a snow fort because it was a creation enjoying day. And tonight before I came, I don't know how it was at your house, but we were rushing through dinner, and I quick ate, and then the kids were going to eat, and my son wanted to borrow my plate because it was a good resource stewarding moment to not have to wash 2 of them. So it is working. The through lines are sinking into the heads and the minds and the lives of our kids. We're still training new staff, and we're continuing to work on that. But that was our first initiative as we think about discipleship and faith nurturing. We think that going through the curriculum by teaching not just for information, but for transformation, we want to continue to work on that and continue to develop that. The second piece was really about cultivating an environment that nurtures spiritual formation and the growth of our students. And that led to a lot of discussion about what does a healthy partnership look like with the church, the home, the school, the different roles that each of us play. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? We recognize that our curriculum, again, is the starting point for a lot of that. Hiring the right staff. Our staff become the shepherds, the spiritual shepherds of our children for 8 hours a day. Many of us recognize that our teachers have more time with our kids than we do as parents. And so the curriculum and staff is an important part of it. But with that, we think about how do we help partner with parents? What does that look like? And you've probably noticed this year we've been intentional about trying to send out more communication with topics about, just recently we sent one about anxiety and depression, about suicide, about cell phone policy, or how to monitor that in your home. Just all those things. How do we partner with you? We see the effects of it at school, but we understand that it has to be a partnership. We're also looking at how do we go about making sure our students and their spiritual formation, that they're not just relying on Sioux Falls Christian. How do we connect them back to the church? More importantly, how do we keep them connected with the Word of God? And so we're taking steps in that direction. We have all of our seniors right now they've committed to a Bible reading plan. They're paired up with an adult mentor from the church. And so again, there's plans in place of continuing to help foster that. It'd be fun right now to share a bunch of success stories. There are a lot of good things going on here. If you go to our website, you can check out the chapel from January 24. And we had 8 students that shared their testimony. And they talked about how their life has been changed because they've had an encounter with Jesus. If you were at the variety show the other night, we had a foreign exchange student that got up and sang a song because a week before he had been baptized, and 6 months ago he didn't know Jesus. And we can tell you stories about hearts that are being transformed, about lives that are being changed. And with that being said, we also recognize there's a lot of room for improvement. Every day the burden is very real. We recognize that 11 weeks from now, we'll have a class of seniors that graduate, and there are some that don't trust in Jesus as their Lord and Savior, and we recognize that. So there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for improvement. Again, we know we can't change that, but we want to create an environment that encourages that growth and encourages those seeds to take root. The third objective we had focused more on our staff, and we're still very much in the beginning stages of that, but again, recognizing the important role that our staff has in the life of students. We recognize that our staff, we need to be saturated in the gospel. We need to understand the story of grace so that it overflows from us into the lives of our kids. It's like what Paul said to the Romans. He said that his prayer was that the God of hope would fill them with joy and peace so that they would overflow with the hope they have in the Lord. And that's our prayer for our staff. That's something that we want to continue to help nurture and foster. But that's kind of the initiatives that we are focused on right now. So with that, are there any questions about the discipleship and faith nurturing component? All right, now we're going to talk about money.
I must be the money guy here tonight. All right, my job was to lead the fifth component, which was the financial sustainability. As you know, and I discussed before, we talked about budget shortfalls, and our goal was to just really take a deep dive into the financial side of Sioux Falls Christian and how we compare to other schools, what we do well, and what we can improve on. The task force kind of contacted roughly about 15 to 20 different Christian schools, both locally and around the United States. We contacted them and we asked them a series of questions, from everything from what do they charge for tuition, do they have budget shortfalls, do they offer multi-family student discounts, do they have a tuition aid program, and what does that look like? What other sources of revenue do they have coming in to their school? And then also, how competitive or what do you pay your teachers and staff? We came up with about 4 topics, but I'm going to spend the time here in the 5 minutes that I have here to discuss just 2 of those. One of them was competitive wages and salaries for our staff. If you've followed the news, you've realized that the state of South Dakota in the last year passed a half-cent sales tax in order to increase wages to teachers here in the state. And it's no secret, when you teach at a private school, wages are a little lower than that of a public school. And we love the Lord. We want to, as Luke said, have to teach our kids about Jesus every day. That's why we're here. That's the passion of our school, our teachers, our school board. But yet we realize it takes, in this world we live in, it takes wages to live. And so we looked at the competitive salary landscape that we are in today, and we just went through last year. I will tell you that that piece of our task force is complete. We did go through and we looked at all of the wages, and we created a new teacher scale here at Sioux Falls Christian. The teachers were able to visit with the administration team and go through various task force meetings and forums and discussions with our admin staff, and the board approved a new salary wage scale here a year ago in order to be competitive. The last thing that I'll mention is we spent, and we're going to spend a lot more time on non-tuition revenue. As I mentioned again, with a budget shortfall, this is kind of an exciting piece, but yet it's a big picture, lots of thinking piece that we just formed a task force. We have not met yet, but we hope to here shortly. And the items that we're going to start looking at is how can we create other sources of revenue to fulfill that budget shortfall. As Pam mentioned in her speech, we've identified we could possibly look at a K through 14. Right now we're K through 12. K through 14 is rising costs of college tuition. Can we offer classes here where our students could expand an extra year or 2 and get some college credits out of the way? It's a discussion point that we're going to look at it a little bit further. Not to say we'll go down that route, but we definitely have to explore it. We know it's a hard thing to get host homes here for our foreign exchange. Luke just shared a great testimony of a foreign exchange student. We think it's valuable to have them here. We have discovered that other schools have foreign exchange housing. What would it look like if we had investors donate money to put into a housing facility here off of our campus in our 20 acres where we could house foreign exchange students? We just created the Pathway Literacy Center. If you're not familiar with that, Julie McDonald, Carmen Heatheis, and a variety of other staff have created pathways to help kids learn that have learning disabilities such as dyslexia. It's another revenue source here for the school, and it's just been launched. The other thing that we're going to be looking at is how to create a larger endowment. One of the blessings of Sioux Falls Christian is that we've grown very fast, but in all reality, we're a very young school. We haven't been around all that long to have a ton of grandparents, and endowments are created through legacy and planned giving. But what would it look like if we had a $10 million or $20 million endowment fund here at Sioux Falls Christian? If you had an endowment fund of 10 to 20 million, let's just say 10 million for easy math, most endowments can peel off between 3 and 4% annually. That's $300,000 to $400,000 in revenue that you can peel off your endowment funds that can cover our budget shortfall, or at least the development fundraising line that I showed you earlier. So those are just some of the brief topics that we'll take a look at. Those are some of the main ones. There are a lot of others that we're brainstorming on and looking at closely. And so that's an exciting thing that I'm sure as we go on you'll hear a lot more about. Any questions? Yes?
I had 2 things. Did you find out that other schools are offering multi-children discounts?
We did. There are other schools that offer multifamily discounts. However, that number is shrinking.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, in order to, right now, we give out about $400,000 in multi-student discounts. And so we are finding that schools outside of Sioux Falls Christian have discontinued that.
And then you said that the base pay for teachers had been raised.
We raised it up to $35,000. It was lower than that.
Can you share what it was?
I'm not sure about what staff pay is as far as the low amounts. Jay maybe might be able to expand on that.
Yeah, the teacher pay scale that we put in place a year ago, we were at 33,000 at that time, and last year we bumped it to 34,500 for this current year, and now we're going to 35,000 is what it'll be at.
What is
So you know that you're probably going to ask how that compares.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting, on the half-cent sales tax, different districts throughout South Dakota handled that money differently. Sioux Falls District, for example, they kind of took it and spread it out over multiple areas, and even their support staff got raises and things like that, didn't all go to teacher pay. So we are probably about $1,000 to $1,200 different than Sioux Falls Public Schools, but we're lagging behind Harrisburg by about $7,000 in base pay. Yes.
Do you compensate your teachers with a discount for their own children?
I didn't get the question.
Do you compensate the teachers in other ways, like give their children a discount if they want?
Yeah, so our teachers, they go through the process of applying through teacher assistants, much like our parents do, but we have a scale, sliding scale for the teachers wherever they come in at. Like it's 5 different levels, I believe it is. But they go through TADS like any family would to get that level of where we know where they're at. So they apply for it as well. I didn't mean to answer your questions.
Oh, that's okay, thank you. Carrie?
The local comparison to other Christian schools, was that like non-denominational, or was Sioux Falls Catholic schools getting that?
We looked a little bit at Sioux Falls Catholic. Most of it was other Christian schools in Michigan, California, Northwest Iowa, mostly Christian schools. Because they have the same challenges that we do in creating tuition revenue where the public schools don't.
One of the things you always have to be aware of when you're comparing our tuition to any Catholic system is the diocese. Any diocese that a Catholic school is in kicks in varying amounts. I can't say it's half, but it varies from diocese to diocese. The Catholic Church automatically puts in too. So it's a little harder to compare to Catholic schools, even though we compare a lot to Catholic schools.
Danelle.
Right now, there's no revenue. In time, we were able to launch Pathways on October 15. Again, Eric talked about Julie and Carmen have done a lot of work on that. But we were able to launch it. We had an $85,000 gift given to launch Pathways. And that really is to help us cover our expense for the first couple of years. And we hope to get it to break even, and then we hope that it makes some money. But once that Pathways makes some money, it will go toward our operating expenses. So it's going to kick back into the school, hopefully in time. But they have gone from 1 student to, what, Julie? 16 students since October 15.
What is that like
Trip money. So trip money, if you're involved in trip, it goes off varying percentages, but we get as a school 1% so let's say Hy-Vee's at 7%, parents get the 6%, we get 1% of everything sold out of trip, and that would go toward our bottom line also as an income. I'm not sure which line up there it fell under in income, but maybe miscellaneous. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm up next anyway, but if you have any questions on any piece of the 5 areas that were talked about tonight, you may ask them now. You can ask me after this is over. If you have other questions you don't want to ask in this audience, but I want to make sure you get your questions answered, and it can be publicly or it can be privately, but we don't want you wondering about something.